Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I'm AA Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad Podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, rate, or review the show on your favorite platform. We truly appreciate your feedback and would be honored if you shared the podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Today, my guest is Sara Freeman Smith. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to it.
absolutely. Why don't you just start us off with just telling us, my listeners, a little bit about yourself?
Great. Basically, I am an author, inspirational author. I've written several self-help inspirational books, how to, as well as also a speaker and career navigator. And now in my most recent reinventing of myself, a disability advocate. I began to lose my vision about 20 plus years ago. And after numerous tests, it was determined that it was a genetic condition, and unfortunately, it was incurable and would ultimately lead to total blindness. It is a kind of genetic condition where your good cells decide to attack, in this instance, my retina. So I am at about 95% vision loss at this point. But after wallowing on my pity party, I had to suddenly realize that, I loved what I did. I was in the HR recruiting field for many, many years, my entire career. And I wanted to continue to do that. But as you can imagine, being in a recruiting HR capacity, it's all about people, the
Mhm.
relationships, and in reading resumes and in interviewing, and everything was so visual. So that was something that I had to really go deep, deep inside and reflect. And thankfully, through faith and the passion for what I did and perseverance, I was able to continue to maintain and achieve other career goals through my recruiting efforts. But now I suddenly realized, especially after going through the pandemic, everyone was resigning, great resignation. But now there's something also called the great gloom where people are working, but they're dissatisfied. One, they're
Yeah,
overworked, burned out. Others, again, having had time to reflect when the whole world came to a stop. Many people suddenly realize I'm doing this, but I'm doing it for the wrong reason. Maybe because of the material gain, it pays well, or for the status, or for whatever. My parents, my family always was in this business, so this was something that I chose. They wanted to take that safe route, and now sitting behind that desk, they're dissatisfied, disconnected, but also a little bit uncertain as to what is it I want to do when I grow up. In my instance, maybe the fourth
right.
or fifth time. So that's kind of what I am starting to do at this juncture, is to help people really kind of understand you have value and you have purpose, but more importantly, also to dispel those myths about being able to work with people with disabilities, especially the vision impaired individual faces the highest rate of unemployment. So just kind of, dispelling some of those myths from an employment perspective as well. So that's what I do.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Let's start off with, what is your definition of inclusion?
I thought about that. I'm glad I watched some of your podcasts, because I would
Yeah.
have been, duh, okay. That's a mouthful. But uh, for me, and again, as I stated, being in recruiting, DEI
Yep.
was always at the forefront of all the organizations that I worked for. But for me, from a recruiting perspective, it starts really from an inside outside perspective. In other words, a more mental mindset for individuals, because it is breaking down a lot of those biases, those preconceived perceptions, notions, misinterpretations, misunderstandings. But when you are coming to look at from an inclusivity, or being inclusive, it is starting and looking at that person from a different perspective. And that means, and I love Stephen Covey's book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. because one of
Mhm.
his habits says seek to understand others before they can understand you. In other words, get out of your shoe for just a few minutes. Granted, you're going to get out fast because no one wants to stand in someone else's shoes, especially if they are different. But
Right.
it gives you that perception and empathy. You begin to listen with a little bit more of an empathetic ear, because suddenly, if now I was able bodied and now I'm forced to be in a wheelchair and I'm paralyzed from the neck down. Am I not still that same person? I still have the intellect, I still can do, but now you can understand from that person's perspective in the same blind, culturally, geographically,
Right.
all of those perspectives. So it starts from an inside out. And then once you begin to say, let me get out of my shoes and first understand where this person's coming from, then it's about going out, not only reaching out, but intentionally finding places where you can attract, recruit, hire, and most importantly, retain, but make those individuals feel like they are included. Because you can invite me to a party, Aaron, and open up the door and say, hey, Sarah, glad you could come, and leave me at the front door. And you go back into your great room with all your
Right.
friends, and you guys are just cracking up. I'm
Yep.
in, but do I
Yep.
feel like I'm included? No, until someone walks up and says, hey, Sarah, nice to meet you. Hey, let me bring you in and introduce you to some of the people here. And then when I say I'm blind, oh, well, then let me describe. This person has a red Santa hat on, so that's
Sure.
what makes the difference. So for me, it's the full package, but it is making that concerted effort. It starts internally, but then it's those outward actions and then fulfilling them, and obviously retaining it, keeping it going, and making sure it starts, from a top down perspective. Because you look at other people, and if you're the only one, eventually you can't do it
Right.
by yourself. So.
For sure. Yeah, I love that. So you brought up something um I hadn't thought about before. So I have a
Mhm,
daughter. She's 22. Uses a
mhm, mhm,
wheelchair.
mhm,
So
mhm,
if you talked about like going to a party. So for us, if there was a birthday party, wedding, anything. I mean, if
mhm,
it wasn't in a
mhm.
place where you can get a wheelchair
A
into it,
public, yeah, yeah, yeah,
we could
exactly.
we could we couldn't attend that. So you brought up you kind of talked about a little bit what
Hmm.
in your situation, if you show up to a party,
Hmm.
what they can do to help you. What are some other things, like if you go to like a party, what other things
Hmm.
should like the host and the other guests like do with
Right.
somebody who is
Hmm.
blind to make it more
Exactly.
of a better
Well,
experience?
one of the first things is, I tell people, we all are social beings, but we
Right.
also, again, having that mindset of inclusivity, thinking
Right.
if I invite Aaron, I have to also, his plus one could very well be his daughter. Then
Right.
ask the question, don't assume that everybody is like me. Then if I don't know, then I can ask, hey, do you know, I see that Aaron's plus one is, what's your daughter's name?
We call her Cece.
Cece. So I see that Cece's coming, and that person could say, oh, I do know her. She's in a wheelchair. Then I, as a host, it's my obligation to say, oh, I didn't realize that. Well, one of the things that, and a lot of people don't know, you can rent portable ramps that
Yep.
allow people to come into your house. And then if you have a step or something that can be, situated. Now that's an added cost, but if you're going to spend the cost to have a party, then make everybody feel welcome. So
Right.
one could do something along that line, but asking, and then especially in my instance, being blind, it's beautiful to walk into a house, but if you've got a lot of knickknacks, a lot of things, you've got
Hmm.
variations on your floor, you got the throw rugs, the ones that's easy because I'm using a
Right.
cane, or
Yep.
I may also have a service animal, I may have a guide dog. And
Yep.
so you need to ask those questions in advance, but it is how you ask, not from an offensive, but to make you feel warm and welcome. So, and thinking of that just in case if someone does have that. So, and then saying, hey, don't worry, I'm going to guide you through here. I've even moved a few little things aside so that it's okay for you to feel comfortable, because you go and you sit and you just kind of go, oh, if I go to the right, I'm going to knock over this beautiful wine glass or something like that. So, it's just the
Right.
little simple things that you can let someone know that, wow, they are thinking and wanting to make sure that I'm just as comfortable as everybody else.
Yeah. Those are great tips. Thank you.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, what's the meaning of your book title, Turning Stones into Gems?
I know I get that a lot. Actually, what it means is it's an inside outside process. Are you familiar with the geode? It's a crusty old
Yep.
rock,
Yep.
that, but looking on the outside, it looks like a beat up old rock. And I tell this story because my son at that time was in elementary school when because this is my third edition of the book. So some 25 years ago, believe it or not, I wrote the first edition. We were in a Discovery Channel store at the mall. And you know how they used to have all those gadgets and things. And
Yeah.
here he
Yep.
comes running up to me saying, "Hey, Mama, can I buy this? Can you buy me this rock?" And I'm going, "What the world is wrong with you? We've got plenty of those in our backyard. Do you think I am going to spend money on a rock?" And
Right.
he's going, "No, you don't understand." So then he takes me over to this larger display of a geode, and I was blown away. And immediately, I already had the title. It is what society does to each and every one of us. What we do is we judge and make opinions of what we see on the outside when your true value and your true worth is on the inside. But you got to work on letting that shine, because if you feel like you're junk or you're a rock in a pile of stones, then that's the way society's going to treat you. So the book is like a diamond in the rough. You immediately, you don't think of it as being of value, but boy, when it goes through that refining process, look what it turns out to be, one of the most valuable gems that there is. So in the book it talks about going through that process, and I use myself as an analogy because
Sure.
society initially had deemed me as, "Poop, you're just going to be another rock in a pile of stones." But you really, really have to know and reach deep inside to get that value, to bring it out. So
Okay.
it's discovering that purpose. So that's what it's about.
Okay. That's great.
Mhm.
So you had written the first edition before you started losing your vision, is that correct?
Yes, I sure did. And the third, this updated edition, I simply updated it with some facts and then started talking to people because I lost my vision. I'd probably say maybe 10, 15 years
Okay.
after writing the first edition. And I knew that, hold on, people kept coming to me saying, "Sarah, how are you still recruiting and finding and matching people? I didn't realize that your vision was that bad." And I'm going,
Yeah.
well, it is something that I had to, first of all, understand that there were workarounds using accessibility tools. It was like learning how to drive on the left side of the road instead of the right, or learning how to drive from an automatic to a stick shift. It doesn't
Yep.
mean that I can't drive, but it's going to take a lot of work for me to learn how to do it differently. And it's up to
Sure.
me if I want to throw up my hands and give up, or okay, I'm never too old to learn. So it is kind of digging into those trenches. So now when I speak, I can talk to people about going through that depression, that grief. It was a
Mm.
form of grief to understand that you're going to lose something as valuable as your sight. And next to death, losing one's vision is probably ranks very, very high. So, but I'm living my best life through
Yeah.
this vision loss, and just trying to encourage others that there is a rainbow at the end of that
That's
storm.
that's great. Have you said you started, doing some disability advocacy. Have you connected with other
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
with vision
Support
loss?
groups. Yes. And how I started doing that is, once I accepted the fact that I couldn't change the fact that my vision was going to continually uh, be diminished and
Right.
ultimately would lead to blindness. And initially, I was given some lists of some support groups as well as resources with the state. But
Sure.
at that time, I wasn't ready to accept it. You
Right.
had to kind
Yep.
of, digest it and marinate on that, and that whole process. But once I did, and then I started learning about the fact that I joined and became involved in some disability organizations focusing on visual impairment. And they were telling me how many of them wanted to work, and I was working and I was in recruiting, and I found myself saying, okay, well, this is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to advocate for yourself. You're going to have to know what kind of accommodations you need and request it. The law, here it is, ADA. I'm in HR. It's been
Yep.
around, 30 plus years. So leverage and use that. So at that point, I was doing recruiting with, the traditional recruitment engineers, professionals, managers, leaders, executives, C-suite people. But these were all able bodied people, at least from my perspective. So I took time off to get off that merry-go-round. And then I started working with an agency that particularly had contracts with the state of Texas, helping
Okay.
those with disabilities find employment. And that's
Sure.
when I became immersed in saying, if I can show someone with whatever type of disability how they can restructure their resume, how to answer the questions, how to show that they're capable, then that's my advocacy, and that's where it grew. And so with involvement in helping individuals find jobs that were working with the state, then I became, officer roles, leadership roles in various organizations, and then being able to talk to other companies when we would have seminars and say, hey, dispel this myth. It doesn't cost. Because the biggest issue, quite frankly, is they think that it is going to be an expensive venture, and it is going to raise their, liability insurance costs and all these negative
Right.
things that there's not fact based. As a matter of fact,
Right.
it's just the opposite. So that's where I get into my advocacy part.
Sure.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know what, I mean, just thinking while you were talking about the HR that like call it a system. Like
Mhm.
I'm assuming it's um s- not on purpose, but the way it's set up kind of puts somebody with a vision
Oh yeah.
impairment at a disadvantage. Like, what are some things like somebody with a vision impairment can do to kind of take some of those built-in system things,
Right.
make them less of a problem for them?
Well, to be perfectly honest, one of the first things is, you feel really, really incapable of walking in that door when you don't know what to expect on the other side, especially when you've heard from others how they were treated. So it
Right.
is the most important thing for anyone with a disability to believe in themselves. And
Yep.
unfortunately, parents, teachers, doctors all fall into that pool of saying, just go over in the little corner and you can get on, disability SSI, and you can just, people can come, they can care for you, take care of you, and
Right.
because you're going to hurt yourself. So if that's poured into you initially, it's shaky, saying,
Yeah.
hey, I want to walk into this major company and prove to them I want to do this. So
Yeah.
you have to believe in yourself, and you have to know what I'm capable of doing and what I will need in order to allow me to be able to do that. And one of the things, unfortunately, some of us take for granted is, okay, I may be great analytical, but I need a lot more time than normal to crank out this information. So one of the accommodations could be maybe because I have a learning disability when I am interviewing and I ultimately get the job. That's the other thing. You do not have to disclose your
Yep.
disability unless it is obvious. Unless
Yep.
now, in my instance, I got to walk in there with a cane and ask
Right.
somebody how to get to it. So it's quite obvious. But
Yeah.
there are invisible, or undiscernible, disabilities that you don't, and you can do that once you're hired. But then ask for an accommodation based upon your disability and why you need that. And so, in my instance, I will need to be able to confidently state, I need a screen reader. I prefer JAWS, or I prefer NVDA, or whatever my screen reader of
Sure.
choice is, and perhaps even have a program that I can demonstrate or bring my laptop to show them, work with IT, and show them that this is not going to be a cost to you, or the state may even actually load it onto a company's laptop and even bring a trainer to come in and work with IT to make sure everything is compatible. You get a mobility trainer who can show you navigationally how to get around the offices, the conference room,
Right.
cafeteria, all those sorts of things. But you have to know what and how to relay that over, because oftentimes if we're in HR, we don't know. And if we got to go out and do research, unfortunately, we may get misinformed versus you're the person in the driver's seat. Come with that information. So that's one of the first things I have to
Sure.
teach people is being confident in knowing specifically what tools, know the cost, know the implications, and then say, hey, I can even provide, backup support with the state or have someone who can come in and, talk, techie kind of stuff from
Yeah.
that aspect. So it's knowing those things. And it's really great, like, using technology right now. The only thing I would need is, hey, am I positioned right if I'm doing a Zoom call? But we even have resources and apps that we can reach out to paid professionals to come on prior to it and say, hey, Sarah, you're all situated. Great. Boom, that I may not even have
Hmm.
to rely on someone at work. So there's so many resources in technology and adaptive technology, and it continues to evolve now that companies, once they find out, they're going, oh my gosh, and I can take a resume and I can evaluate that resume just as easily as if a sighted person would be. The only thing I cannot assess is the formatting. If it's got a lot of, graphics, or if it's,
Oh, yeah.
colorful and fonts and all
Sure.
those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But from a contextual, perspective, oh yeah, my screen reader is going to take me and I can spot on, and I can even now with the use of AI, and it used to be it had to read everything from the top
Yep.
of the resume to the bottom. Now I can just say, read the line on working at ABC Engineering Company in 2010 to 12,
Sure.
and it'll go right there. So these are tools that people are going, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. And my phone, oh my gosh, I'm not playing on Facebook or Instagram. I'm using this because it has so many, magnification
Right.
tools,
Yep.
screen reading tools, and things of that nature. So these are things that being able to confidently explain to individuals in the company, and then they understand, oh my gosh, well, how are you getting around? Well, there's tags. Ones can put invisible little tags on certain doors and rooms. Boom. Trust me, if in the case of a fire, I'm not going to get left behind. There is no
Right.
way you're going to leave me. So it's dispelling a lot of those myths as to how that person's going to be able to operate, and then in determining, oh, a bunch of times, do I really need to go in there and make those copies, or can I send the copies and someone and say, hey, can you bring me my, and I can go, come on.
Yep.
It's certain things that you can reassign to help,
For sure.
mitigate that. So those are the kind of things that I enjoy and want to do more of with companies, where they can see that this is definitely possible.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what do you mean there? You can put tags in doorways? Like,
Oh,
what do you
there's
mean by
there's
that?
it's one company that we use is called, or that I'm familiar with, it's called Way Around. And they're tags, they're simple little labels that what you do is it's like a label, and you kind of like have a little pen or use your scanner, and you hit and say, this is ladies' room, and you just
Oh,
place
okay.
that little tag. And so when I'm on my phone and it can, and I go, I can d- navigationally, even with my app, I can go, hey, do you see a door? How many doors, et cetera? If I don't read
Yeah.
Braille, then I can
Yep.
use that, and it's a way around tag. And plus, I pull it
Oh,
up and it'll tell me there's ladies' room marked, the conference room, boom, boom, boom. I've gone to conferences and we've used blind conferences, and we use the tags to get from
okay.
one, session to another
Sure.
session and things like that. So that's one way. And then I don't know if you've heard about it, but it is one of my favorite. I'm not wearing them today, but they're called Ray-Ban Meta Smart Glasses. So
No.
Ray-Ban partnered with Meta,
Okay.
and they were really created for a sighted individual to do hands-free videos and photographs, and downloading them instantly to your social media.
Oh,
And
sure. Yep.
Ray-Ban has gorgeous glasses. However, they also inserted AI, because Meta,
Yep.
Facebook has gotten into the AI field, and you can talk to the glasses and say, hey, Meta, what time is it? Hey, Meta, what's in front of them. Look and tell me what's in front of me. Well, it can say you're in a room with people, and you can say, hey, Meta, is there a clear path for me to walk from here to the door? And it can go, there is a box in front of the door. So I'm
Hmm.
listening, and you don't know. Well, sometimes if someone has
Yeah,
it, but the microphone is on, it's on the arm of your glasses, and
sure.
the camera is right on one corner, and you can either click a little button to take the video, or you can just simply say, hey, Matt, take a picture of the room and describe it for me. And
Okay.
voila, and it'll
Wow,
download it to your phone. You can upload it to your photo gallery. You can text message it, email it, whatever. It is such a cool feature. And I think they've been out
that's
about a
really
year.
cool.
So yeah, so utilizing some of those
Yeah,
things also are very helpful. Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about, you don't, if unless it's visible, you don't have to really disclose if you have a disability when you're,
Mhm. Mhm.
applying for a job. Like, what is your, I mean, like you said, for you, you're going to come in there
Well,
with a cane,
yeah,
so it's going to be
exactly.
obvious. But
I,
like, how do you navigate with people, like helping them decide, like at what point they want to, if at all, disclose they have a disability?
right. That's a great question, Aaron. And the best answer is it's unique to each person,
Hmm.
because I can't tell you you need to go in there and disclose that fact
Right.
that you can't see, Sarah. Well, what if I can see enough to get into the door? Because again, there are inherent biases that
Yep.
people will build in. So what I do as a career navigator is I sit and discuss how confident are you to walk in that door, because you can also on the phone, if what if I have a hearing impairment, or what if you need to speak slowly for me,
Yeah.
to
Right.
interpret? I could be on the spectrum. I mean, there's numerous
Right.
things. And if what I ask the person to do is you weigh out if you feel you can confidently still convey your capability and not disclose, then I say go for it,
Yeah.
because that's fine. But however, if I could do the same thing and you misinterpret that body language as that person didn't even laugh at my joke. Well,
Right.
guess what? I could have Asperger's or something. I'm
Yeah.
just sitting there. I just answered the question. So you can lose out all the fact that you just simply didn't disclose. So the question becomes, how confident are you in order to do that?
Right.
And there are some disabilities that it's not necessary. It is absolutely not crucial that they know that until that point when you are starting the job, and you know that you're going to need some type of accommodations, whether it's to go for an appointment or just some downtime, just to step away some extra, other than your normal break time. So that's a question. And if someone inherently just says you must go in and disclose that, I question that advice, because you don't know that person's situation,
Right.
and they have to be able to confidently explain why, and then accept the consequences. And then at the end of the day, when I've disclosed, or when I've walked in, even before I started using a cane, if I had that sense that person was uneasy, then is this the company that, if you won't even give
Right.
me a chance, you've already dismissed me because I have
Right.
a disability? I don't want to work for you any
Yeah.
more than you want to work for me. So bye bye. Thank you. I can add that to my checklist, is, put that over in that special place. So that's my concept, because at the end of the day, even if I didn't, and then I did get hired, is this going to be the place that I feel
Yeah.
welcome and that I can do, my best work? No. So that's the determining factor. So there really is no right or wrong. It has to
Right.
be something individually that people have to think of and determine.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. 'Cause as you were talking, I was thinking about that. Like, if you, I mean, to me, it's like, would I just throw it out there and figure out, see what their reaction is? Because, like you're saying, if it's
Mhm.
not a positive reaction, why do I even want to
Yeah,
go
why
down that
would I
path
want to
if they're
go?
not even?
Well, you
Yeah.
can, especially if you're sighted and you read body language and they're all
Right.
looking around, looking at you,
Right.
you know, okay, well,
Yeah.
I don't think this is the place. You've already told me enough.
Yeah.
on, because as in recruiting, you only get one chance to make a first
Right.
impression. You don't get a chance to go back out that door and come back in with the nice clothes on,
Yeah.
or whatever the case may be. You only get that first chance. And if this is how you're presenting it to me and you are uncomfortable, like you're going to catch my blindness or whatever the case may be, I
Yeah.
don't think I want to work for this organization either. So, yeah. And it also,
No, go ahead.
sometimes when you disclose in the way you disclose, it gives people entryway as to dig into more information. When again, in the recruiting field, I can't tell you how many people were acing the interview and then they kept talking and they kept talking. And so TMI is the too much information. You did yourself in. Just stop. So I don't like to give people any more information than what's absolutely necessary so that they
Right.
cannot go and probe and deep and get into it, because you unfortunately open that door unless you're willing to go, hey, and this is what I need, and this is the reason why I need,
Right.
and it has been reasonable. So yeah.
For sure.
Mhm.
How do you address the balance between pursuing passion and considering practical aspects in a career change?
Well, again, that has to be a personal question, but I'm a firm believer if you pursue your passion or something that you have always been good at, that comes easily, naturally, and also it has been confirmed by others. And this is not something you just thought in your head, oh, I think I'm going to be the greatest singer in the world, but nobody else has told me that, then I don't know about that one, okay? But if someone has said, wow, Aaron, you are really, really good at painting, and you go, yeah, this is just a hobby. And then you're doing something else, and somebody goes, what the world? My gosh, this is awesome. Do you sell this stuff? I mean, when you get
Yeah.
confirmations from people, especially strangers, that say, this is good. Do you, oh, yeah, I love doing that, but that's just a hobby. I just don't have enough time. Because you've convinced yourself,
Right.
you and you alone, that self talk, that it's not practical. I can't earn a living. Or it could have been something even as kids. I remember my parents really wanted me to be a school teacher because it was
Yeah.
the safe and the logical,
Safe. Yeah.
easy. You can always be a teacher no matter where you are.
Right.
But
Yep.
that wasn't my passion. But you're good at you're teaching, but no, that's not
Right.
my passion. My passion is I love talking to people. I loved encouraging people, and I love kind of getting their head and go, so what is it you want to do? Well, have you ever thought about doing it this way? Have you ever thought, and so that is something when you know what you is your passion, and God gives us all a purpose, a distinct purpose. The problem is we tend to want to go a little bit differently, and it's about the
Hmm.
money. And a lot of times that's what rules our thought pattern is. Can I earn a living? And yes, there are times you have to put that passion aside, but it
Yep.
will never go away. It could be
Right.
something that you could put it in as a little kind of side gig. Let me just put this on a little simmer, but still kind of
Yep.
keep my hand into it. And when the kids get up out of college, what have you, then it's that me time that you can simply say. So you balance it based upon whatever those obligations are, and say, either I can afford to take this plunge and I can only do it now, or this is something I really, really have to, wait it out until I get to that next level. But I want to put this little caveat because something is always going to come up. Just when you think
Yep.
you're ready to do it, then something else is going to drop in front of
Yep.
you. Then you've got to say, when is enough? When is it going to be? If not now, when?
Right.
Because
Yep.
you'll be going through the rest of your life doing the what I shoulda, coulda, woulda. So
Right.
you have to ultimately take that plunge and say, if I fail, it won't be because I didn't
Right.
actually try. Most of us don't plan to fail. We just fail to plan
Yeah.
and stick to that plan. And it's not always going to work out that first time. But if it's inherent, I think that most people will succeed at it and do it well. So
Yeah. That's great.
that's my advice.
What is one tip you can share to help our listeners be more inclusive today? Just something simple they can do starting today.
Simple in starting today is always wake up every day believing in yourself that you are valuable, that you can accomplish and achieve one thing that day and stick to it. Don't ever doubt. Don't ever put yourself down. And most importantly, don't ever give others permission to put you down. Because if you surround yourself with toxic people, it is as contagious as a pandemic. You become just as toxic. So start and end always believing and trusting that that quiet, still voice that God gave you, that you are worth every cent, and push and strive to be the very best that you can possibly be.
Thank you. Why don't you talk a little bit about where people can find your book or
Oh,
book you as a speaker or what other kinds of
sure.
things you can help
Abs-
them with?
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Well, the primary place is on my website, which is the letter U, the letter R, and gems, gems.com, www.urgems.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I have an Instagram page and Facebook and a little bit of Twitter. I'm going to get there. I'm just starting to get into the social media thing, but slowly but surely, I
Yep,
said I gotta get on with the Star Wars people so that I'm not going to be back in Jurassic Park. Go where the people are. But those social media venues
sure.
are definitely easy to reach out to me.
Great. Ready for the last question?
I think I am.
I'm holding up a can of Spam lunch meat. Do you like Spam? Yes or no?
I have to admit that's a no. I had spam as a kid, and it was okay, but only because as I became and the older I got, my husband and I are really cognizant of
Yeah,
health, and that is it's a processed food. So let's just
yeah,
put it that way. Yeah, no,
yeah, for
I,
sure.
I would have to pass. Now, someone could slide it in, and I didn't know, but if I know what it is,
Right.
no, I think I'm going to pass.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you so much, and I wish all the best to you and your daughter. You continue to get out there and help others be more inclusive. Great job.
Thank you. To all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Inclusive Dad Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, rate, or review the show. Your feedback helps us connect with more champions of inclusion. Remember to share this podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.